Hello, everyone, and welcome back to PLM Talks. I'm actually doing a special episode today. As you notice, I have two guests. One of them will be my co-host, Carson Winter. You know him from the various interviews he's done with me before, as well as he co-hosted the that's what I call horror live reading event. Hi, Carson.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here. I've enjoyed hosting so much that I've decided to latch parasitic onto your career and sustain myself on the goodwill you create with others. If you don't know me from these videos, I am an author, punker, and raw nerve, as my bio describes me. I have stories in Apex, Vastarian, Tales to Terrify. Just had a story out in Dreadstone Press for their Split Screen Volume 1, The Guts of Myth. I've got Soft Targets coming in March 2023. Back to you, Palm.
Oh, and will you be doing an interview with me for Soft Targets as well?
Yeah, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah,
I'll be
you're
there.
like, if we had like a frequent flyer stamp card for my channel, like you would have already won like a free episode. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm surprised you don't take my tax information at the end of like every episode and try to sign me up for a credit card.
There you go. But we're not here to interview Carson this time. Maybe next time.
Not this time.
We're here with Patrick Barb. Yay, Patrick.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hello. In fact, the whole fucking reason I'm here is because last time I was talking with Pam, she mentioned
you have to call me Plem. That's my brand.
Oh, I'm sorry, Plem.
Thank you.
Get it right. She was talking about interviewing Patrick Barb, who I am a huge fan of, love his short fiction. And I immediately just inserted myself into this podcast. I was like, I need a co-host. I want to talk to Patrick about what he does and hopefully glean some important knowledge that's going to make writing faster, easier, and better for all of us.
Hopefully. If not, we'll just blame Patrick Barb.
Yeah, fine. It's blame me. If you do,
you've got a magic bullet, right?
Let me know. Because I'll tell you, I don't necessarily have the magic bullet or the secret key.
Well, with that encouraging statement, let me formally introduce my guest. Patrick Barb is an author of weird, dark, and horrifying tales, currently living and trying not to freeze to death in St. Paul, Minnesota. That's practically Canada. He is the author of the novellas Gargantuan's Ghost from Grey Matter Press, Turn from Alien Buddha Press, and The Nut House, serialized in Cosmic Horror Monthly, as well as the novelette Helicopter Parenting in the Age of Drone Warfare from Spooky House Press, which is what we'll be talking about today, and a forthcoming dark fiction collection pre-approved for Haunting from Key Light Books, Turner Publishing, which is coming out in October 2023. He is an active member of the HWA and a full member of the SFWA. You can find him on Twitter or visit him at his website at patrickbarb.com. Ta-da!
That's me. You nailed it.
That's you. I mean, it helps that you gave me your bio.
I think the typo went through, or it's spelled corrected, the Gargantuana's Ghost for the Grey Matter Press. I think it's spelled corrected when I pasted it over.
So it's Gargantuana's Ghost.
Yeah.
Okay. Remember that, viewer.
Just want to get that right, so if people want to put it in their little Google machine, they can,
into the Google bots.
Yeah, that's really why we're here. Is number one is I believe search engine optimization. That's kind of what we've all gathered here today to celebrate.
We are at the cult of the SEO.
Oh no.
If nothing else.
So Carson and Patrick, now that I've read the bio, I realize you two will have worked together before because Carson, you're with Cosmic Horror Monthly as well, right?
Yes. Holy shit, you're totally right. Patrick and I believe, have exchanged emails at one point, which makes us co-workers, I think, for a brief period.
That's right.
But we were very lucky to get the Nut House. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Patrick? Give us the pitch on the Nut House.
Yeah, absolutely. This one was a really fun one to write and to find a home for with Cosmic Horror Monthly. The Nut House is my talking animal, crime, cosmic horror novella. It was serialized over 6 issues last year in CHM. The basic premise is you have this squirrel who is the best sort of acorn thief in the neighborhood. He is roped into leading up this gang because of debts he owes, and sort of he crossed the wrong squirrel, so to speak. And they go into this house, into the attic, where there's supposed to be this legendary cache of like acorns. And what you find in there once they get inside the house is that this is a hoarder's house. And she has amassed a lot of trash, a lot of weird animals, and things go south, so to speak, as they're trying to get out of this house. And so it's kind of me trying to do a little bit of like Michael Mann and Nicholas Winding Refn, sort of hard-boiled crime with kind of the weird Laird Barron tough guy protagonist. And they're squirrels. Also, they're squirrels. I should say this, and I really want to stress this for anyone who might want to check it out. They are little tiny squirrels. They don't wear coats. They don't wear jackets. They don't have like cool catchphrases. They're just squirrels who have bushy tails, but they talk, and they talk to each other. And it was really fun to write. I didn't think it would necessarily find a home, but it's one of those projects where you have the idea and you got to write it, because damn it, what else are you going to do with it? And I'm really happy it found a home for the serialized version, and looking forward to hopefully in this next year finding a home for collected edition of the novella, and getting the sort of whole package together for folks so they can read it in one place.
Yeah, because at CHM we published it as like a serial over 6 issues, and it was we might do something similar to that again. Actually, I think it was pretty cool, and it seemed like a lot of people responded to it. So we might do like a novella open call later in the year if anyone's interested in that out there in the web. But to your point though, Patrick, we did almost pass on it when we realized the squirrels weren't wearing jackets. That's
kind of nutty.
Yeah.
That's what I'm here for, folks.
I wanted them to be wearing sunglasses. I wanted leather coats, but Patrick delivered a tale that was good beyond the winter wear. So we were happy to take it.
Thank you. I try.
Well, then diving into just the general writing topic. So you take a lot of influence from horror cinema and its tropes. What's one trope that you haven't played with but would like to?
It's a great question.
Carson did it. I'm just
I've tried to.
That's a Carson question.
That's a Carson question.
Fair. In my writing, I try to look at these things that are familiar and find the underside of them, or flip them on their head, or try to find some way that they can be executed or presented in a way that's maybe not expected. I'm a really big fan of what someone like Stephen Graham Jones does with the slasher, for instance. Like, he really examines it from all sides and can still somehow, however many books, however many stories on, find these new angles for it. There's plenty of other people who can do that with like monsters and other things like that. I think for me right now, the two sort of, I'll pick two because I'm greedy. I just want to have them all. That I would sort of tackle are either, the kids on bikes genre, the sort of like Stranger Things and It and that kind of thing. There's so much, it seems like very much in the zeitgeist at the moment, but there's a lot of different ways to look at it, I think. So that's been on my mind recently. And in addition, this is maybe something maybe further off that I'd want to work on, the revenge thriller, like the 70s sort of like gritty, grimy sort of, I've been wronged or something has happened upon me and now I want revenge. Not necessarily, anything from like horror to crime, like that genre, the sort of the theme, I think, crosses over in different genres. And it's one that can be very exploitative. Absolutely. And there's been some takes that have sort of tried to modernize it or tried to kind of bring it into a 21st century context. It's a little scary, I think, to deal with, and that's why it kind of intrigues me. So it's sort of been it's on the back burner in the back of my mind, trying to find out, what is an interesting take that is doing something new with that material, which is what I'm always trying to do when I am tackling these tropes or these motifs from horror cinema or sort of the larger sort of horror film zeitgeist.
That's an interesting point you had, kind of about reinventing these tropes that maybe you like 60% of, like, there's a kernel there, but for whatever reason they were pulled in a direction because of the time and place they were created, that they veer off into something that's maybe not relevant anymore. And it also speaks to, you mentioned Stephen Graham Jones and other authors out there that are also kind of playing with film tropes. Now, it makes me wonder, with the debate between young writers being more influenced by cinema versus literature, how avoidable is it to even, write without that influence of horror cinema, because it's so pervasive in our culture. Like, I feel like to a degree you're doing something, you're doing something that's necessary. It's a reckoning between the culture and literature by dealing with those tropes head on, which I think is really exciting and relevant.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at people that are in that sort of generation, like maybe two above us, let's say, Stephen Graham Jones, Laird Barron, John Langan, Gemma Files, people like this that have, been around horror cinema and the sort of rise and fall and the rise again of it, and also around the sort of weird fiction and horror fiction. They've always had those materials to play with, or at least they have had them for the sort of span of time when they have been at their peak, let's say, and when they're writing. And I think for me and other writers, of our sort of cohort, let's say, it's a synthesis now that we're trying that I'm trying to do, at least, is taking the sort of original horror fiction, weird fiction of the past, marrying that with the horror cinema, and then marrying that again with the stuff that is the sort of first wave amalgamation of it, and now trying to, this is the next generation of the sort of crossbreeding of these two areas. I think it produces some interesting results that way.
Yeah, totally. And so much of your work kind of deals with that, and I think deals with it in such a elevated, intelligent, but also fun level, that it shows that there is still effective literature being written with those influences, that it doesn't mark a decline of the form. If anything, the form is getting more advanced and more interesting because of these new influences, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've had people in the past tell me, like, don't write a werewolf story because, like, werewolves are passe, they're too old, everyone knows, we've seen it all. If you're gonna write a werewolf story, make it like, we don't know that he's a werewolf, or like call it something else, or whatever. And I feel like that's a valid piece of advice for some. For me, I just feel like there's still so much blood to wring from the stone of these sort of archetypal figures and characters and these motifs and themes, that I think as an author I try to be fearless when I can, and I think just being able to look at these things and tackle them head on really is a challenge that I'm open to and want to pursue in my work.
Yeah, and absolutely. No, that's a really good point. Especially I'm thinking about, like, when I'm reading collections and stuff, I think there's kind of a sense that, like, the werewolf and the vampire are these sorts of, like, old timey, they're almost like our jazz standards. Like, I get excited when I see like a new author kind of take a spin with these old tropes. Like, even with someone like Thomas Ligotti in the Lost Art of Twilight, you know, there's kind of a sense of recognition and almost renewed empathy with someone dealing with the same cultural figure that you also hold dear, and making a narrative out of their own personal vision of that I think can be really powerful.
Absolutely.
And I was going to say,
go ahead.
It's also something to be said at the fact that these classic monsters were classic for a reason. I mean, you can put twists on them, but people, if they're anything like me, there's something comforting about like a classic werewolf movie. Like you're just like, ah, yeah, we got some werewolves, let's go. Like, so I think people, I always kind of cringe when people lay down rules that are phrased in a way like, you can't do this, you should never do this or that when it comes to writing, because there's always a way to make something work. Writing is an art form, and even if you just write a classic werewolf story, you put your own spin on it. Like The Last of Us is pretty much a zombie show, but people are going nuts for it. So I feel like writers should do as Patrick does and just write fearlessly, write about squirrels.
Yes,
exactly. The biggest monster, the true monsters, are the squirrels.
Yep, it's true.
Besides tropes, though, I also wanted to ask you about, because you've worked professionally in writing and editing, what lessons have you learned in your day job that you've been able to apply to fiction?
Oh, that's a good segue, because I just said, like, I cringe when people put down rules using the word never. So Patrick just hit us with it.
I'll give you all the rules. You know, I just did the math on this the other day because I was talking with someone about my career in publishing and editing, and I have worked now about 17 plus years in publishing, and I've kind of covered all the bases. I've worked, I've been an editor, sort of like worked around editorial my whole life, but I've done everything from textbooks to academic publishing to graphic novels, illustrated fiction, illustrated gift books, and art instruction, a wide variety of things, computer and programming books, and just any like sort of like dry corporate text and everything like that in between. What you find, and what I think is an important lesson for the people on the other side, the creative people, the authors, whether you're writing a book on how to draw Mickey Mouse, or you're writing like a novel or something, is to remember, I think, that the people who are making your book, or who are helping you make a book, they should understand that this may be your only project. This is your one story you're sending out. This is your one book. This is your masterpiece. At the same time, they are working on 10, 20, 30, 40, 100, if it's stories, maybe, let's say, other people's one masterpiece, story, book, etc. And so I think, while it's important that the people on the editorial side and the publishing side appreciate where you're coming from as an author and what you're investing in something, there also has to be sometimes an understanding that things that are said, choices that are made about what's published, what's selected, they're not personal. In fact, a lot of times they're made by somebody who is not making this decision to, pay bills, pay their rent sometimes. And I think it's just important to understand that, because for me as an author today, that frees me a lot from rejection. You can still feel the sting of it. It can still suck really hard when that no comes through, or when you've waited like 100 days or 120, 140, 200 days and the rejection comes. It's a form rejection. And you just want to say, like, fuck this, man. Like, that is definitely something you can be upset about. But at the same time, knowing what I know about the other side and what's on the other side and who's working there and what they're doing, you can't hold it against them. It's just work. And I invest myself 100% in my creative work. what you see on the page or on the screen or wherever you're reading it is me putting out my heart, soul, brain, whatever you want to call it, to make a story that I think is enjoyable, that I think is entertaining. And if it's not for you, that's fine. That happens. There are decisions that are made that are beyond what I'm doing. The other thing that I have taken away from it is much simpler side, and that is just how to say things shorter. Unlike this answer, the greatest part of the editorial.
But at least you're self-aware.
I know a lot of stuff. I know things, and the greatest part of it, the editorial process, is that refining. I find that on my own writing, my work doesn't improve, doesn't get to the point where I'm like, I've got something here, until, let's say, second draft, third draft. That's the kind of moment when you cut out sort of a lot of the extraneous details and you get down to the heart of it. And that, I think, is the other side of it. So there's kind of this broader business sense of it that I've gotten from my work in publishing. And there's also like the more practical, technical side as well. So those are my two big takeaways there.
So, Patrick, one thing I'm kind of curious about here is, you talk about doing 2 or 3 drafts. And, I think as a writer, I feel like my first drafts are pretty close to what ends up getting printed. I feel like you have a little bit of a different process. Like what do your individual drafts look like compared to each other and stuff?
Yeah, I mean,
that was like, I just have to interrupt. What a sly little brag there, Carson.
No.
I read a draft and it's like published, but Patrick,
that's not what I'm trying to say.
Maybe you guys suck and need drafts. Like, how does that feel, plebs?
No, I'm saying I'm very
Patrick, how does it feel to suck?
I mean, I deal with that every day of my life, and somehow I manage to get up. I get out of bed, put my 2 feet on the floor, and just keep moving. Yes,
it's hard not to be, as they call him in the industry, first draft Carson.
Well,
not everyone's like that.
I will briefly explain my process, because the way I think I have pretty decent first drafts is that I constrain myself a lot, and I feel like I don't discover as much of a story as would be possible with more drafts. So I feel like imaginatively I put on the shackles to set out to do something I can easily achieve. But I feel like and that like gets me a lot closer, because I keep the narratives very simple. I keep the characterization very simple, so that I can get in, get out, get my idea on the page, but not have to agonize a lot over many drafts. But I feel like a lot of your stories, we sometimes write in similar areas, but I feel like some of the stuff you do is a lot more intricate. So does that come out through multiple drafts, or kind of what does each draft look like compared to the last?
Yeah, good question again.
I am a genius as the first draft Carson.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
fair enough. I think when I say multiple drafts, it might be a little misleading.
Okay.
There are multiple drafts, but I tend to, the way I kind of work is get an idea, got a lot of them. I've got like notebooks and stuff of things I'll write someday. When the time comes, and let's say time to write a story, I'm going to sit down and start writing. I like to have a good opening line. I think that's just something where I will just sit and not start a story until I've got either the title or the opening line kind of figured out, like how's it going to start, because that's the momentum to kind of keep going. So I'm fairly regimented in my daily writing practice. I try to write 3 times a day, maybe 2, depending on like how the day is going or what other sort of writing related things I need to do. But by and large, right around lunchtime, and then right before I have to go pick up my kids from school. Those are sort of the 2 main times. And then after they're in bed, that's really when I am doing my writing. So in each of these steps,
like writing like bowel movements, I find that appropriate.
Yeah, just gotta crap them out, man. And then I sit down and just really squeeze until something
squeeze it out.
Just squeeze it out. But honestly, the way I work is I'll write until it's time to stop. So I'll do like 30 minutes, let's say, or 40 minutes, or whatever. Then when I come back to the next session, I will start by looking at what I wrote in the previous section, and I will revise that. And that is when I'd like to say that I make cuts, but a lot of times it's not. A lot of times it's like, oh, I didn't say this, or I left out this detail because I was in the zone and I just left out this detail. And then I'll write the new stuff. And that's where the momentum comes in. So each session, I'm revisiting what's come before, polishing that a bit, and then starting out getting at least some raw material. Like I want to have at least a sentence of new stuff every time I write. That's the goal. It's just like a sentence that I'll settle for that. Once they're done, like once I have a draft, once I've kind of reached a point where I can say at the end, because I am more of a discovery writer, like I'll have ideas for plot events. I'll have ideas even for like cool ways this story could be told, like whose perspective is it from, or like, is it starting, like, are there bits that are, interspersed from TV show dialogue or something like that, or something just to kind of mix it up. And I'll try those as I'm going. I've found that if I'm on the right track, I don't have to stop. Like I can keep going and keep creating new things and keep the story going. It has happened plenty of times though, where I will reach a point where I'm like, I have no idea where I'm going. I've sort of wandered down a dark hallway where there is no exit, and I have to go back. And that's when I'll go back to like the very beginning of the piece. And, it could be something as simple as, I say simple, changing the, from third person to first person, or making it present tense, something like that. And that is sometimes the secret. Other times it's like, well, I don't need to wander down this sort of tangent in the tale. I can go back and do what Carson does apparently from the first draft and constrain myself. But I can't go in with the constraints. I've tried it. It sometimes works, but for me, my sort of general style is to just go and just kind of see where it takes me. So once I get a draft in, then it's really about, it's about 2 or 3 drafts. And the first thing I'll do is just do a very basic kind of spell check, Grammarly, that kind of thing. And I like listen to Grammarly like half the time, because sometimes I'm like, I'm not writing a fucking business letter, man. I'm like trying to tell a story. Words need to sound right. They don't need to be right. That's that's how I'm going for it. And then I'll go in and do more of a line by line, read it out loud, see how it sounds, see where things are maybe not connecting. The last special part of my process is I will send it to a magazine that I want to get in, and it'll get rejected. And then I'll read it again and be like, oh, fuck, I fucked this up. And this is how I'll fix it. And that's the real secret, is rejection, is the true.
First draft Carson doesn't know what that means.
No, well, when someone rejects it, I just say, well, obviously they have shit taste. I just need to keep sending it out and not change a word until it's been rejected 30 times. And then I say, well, the world's not ready for this story. And I just write a new story.
Yeah, put it in a time capsule. Let the people of the future find it.
Yeah, where I'll be appreciated, like Kafka.
Yeah, there you go. I find it so interesting how varied writing styles can be, because Patrick, I'm the opposite. I won't do any editing at all. I go straight through, because if I go back and edit, I'm all like, wow, this is shit. I'll just throw this out. I just got to go full goblin mode and go like start to finish. And then I go back and it's always full of typos and it's always horrible. And I always miss half the typos. And then I send it to beta readers and they're like, why do you spell her name like 8 different times? And I'm like, can you just like point it out and like move on? Like, I'm sorry, like I have typos.
Yeah, I would just forget characters' names if I did that.
Yeah.
Like, my memory is so short. I'd be like, his name is Bob, Sam, and Jeremy. They're all the same guy. Just forgot.
If it's a longer work and I forget the name, I'll usually put like it all in caps, like person's name. And then I have managed to forget to take that out when I send it to beta readers, and they'll be like, I think you forgot the person's name here. And I'm like, oh, you think?
Oh man, I have no clue.
Who knows who that person is? But yeah, I'm not like first draft Carson. I take a few drafts.
You're more like first draft Carson than you think, because that's actually pretty much my process.
Yeah. Oh, so maybe I'm first draft Clem.
I just call that a first draft. Maybe I just don't describe what a draft is well, and I feel like a draft means something a little bit different to different writers.
That's true, because to me, a draft is like I do my first draft, which is the story, and then I do my own edits, which is the second draft, send it to betas, and then my third draft is what comes after their feedback.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I do, especially for longer works. But yeah, I think in our minds sometimes as writers, we kind of have this image that each draft is like a rewritten from, word count 0 to word count 4,299, redraft of a story. When really, a draft can be, a spelling check over the entire story, or, it can be some light or heavy revisions. I think that's important for writers to remember, that a draft isn't necessarily as daunting as it can sound. But I think your approach, Patrick, sounds
awful. Why would you edit? Just kidding.
No, yeah. No, editing's for nerds.
Editing is for nerds.
I write my story. I immediately chug a can of Coors. I say, fuck
you crush the can against your head.
Yeah. Crush it against my head.
Oh, yeah, brother.
Yeah, exactly. That's my life. But I also like Patrick's approach, which is very methodical, and it turns out great fiction.
I mean, he is the more successful of us three here, so.
That's true. I've also heard rumors about the size of his member. It is very
okay. Okay, so
hold on. This will be monetized eventually.
Yeah, I'll have to cut that part out.
Not that kind of monetization.
Yeah.
It's not.
Just let me talk about Patrick's giant cock.
Oh, Jesus. So, Patrick.
My mom might listen to this.
Yeah, don't let your mom watch this.
She probably won't.
She already knows.
Yeah. That's true. She probably would know. I mean, she did birth you. But beyond that, I question, and I definitely, this is not due to any past grudge that I might have to certain people. How do you feel about the comma splice? And there is only one right answer.
I feel about the comma splice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's whatever, right? No, it's bad.
There's no real rules.
Like that's why like you have editors for that kind of stuff. Like,
no. What if you want to keep the comma splice? I think it has an artistic value because it changes the rhythm of the sentence in a certain way that I find can be very
push
helpful.
Back. Tell the editor.
Oh,
no.
I do.
Yeah, no. I mean, you can always push back. I when I get like comments, you get the sort of Google Doc with the comments and the edits and stuff. As an editor, again, going back to like the lessons I've learned, if you just take that change out, they're not going to fight you too much. And if they do, like, maybe too much of a stickler, to be honest, like there's only so many times you can go up to an author and say, oh, you didn't need to have a comma here, or you needed to like do something else like this. And they say, well, no, I want it here. And you say, well, no, you can't. And they say, well, I want it. And that's it. That should be the end of the conversation, in my opinion.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. Because thinking about it, I have been asked several times as somebody who's had stories published is like, how much have I pushed back on editors? And in the beginning, when I was a green writer, innocent of the ways of the world, I didn't push back at all because I didn't feel like I could. So I think it's important for writers to know that, like, while writing should be structurally sound and readable, it's also an art form in a way when it comes to writing a story. So, Patrick, you would agree that it's okay to push back, even if grammatically it might not be correct, if you're deliberately meaning to achieve something with it?
Exactly. And I think on the flip side of that, I am always willing to listen to editorial suggestions. I've had plenty of times where somebody said, this might be a shorter way to say this, or here's a paragraph break. That's always a big one. I'll have these big chunky paragraphs and they're like,
you like them thick.
Had a line right there. And it works. And you're like, well, I didn't see it. I was too in the weeds of the writing to see it. And that's where a good editor is so important and so great for work and creating this work.
But Patrick, why aren't you fighting for those thick ass paragraphs, bro?
Yeah,
Look,
fight for the
I got
thick
plenty of them.
paragraphs.
Just like I keep them thick where I need them, and then skinny in the middle, right?
Make those paragraphs clap, my man.
Oh man. Okay, so a little fun last question before we dive into the book itself. But what was the last book in horror or weird fiction, your choice, that really inspired you? And you're allowed to say it was one of mine if you want to.
I think the Sisters of the Crimson Vine was really the one that just really took it over the edge. And I think also,
thank you.
Fuck, I blurbed this one. What is it?
Oh no, you blurbed it and you forgot it.
The Split Screen Volume 1 featuring the Carson Winter story.
Was that a first draft? Oh my god.
Honestly, pretty close. Yeah. I just did like a pretty quick run through edit where I just cleaned shit up, and they only had a couple changes.
Hell yeah, I'm inspired right now as we're talking just to hear about it. But I think honestly, I try to read a lot. I have like three books downstairs and then 3 books by the bed going at any one time. Short stories, nonfiction, fiction, like novels and things like that. Probably from last year, the work I think that kind of kicked things in gear for me was The Fisherman by John Langan, which I had not read until sort of end of last year. And I'm a fan of his short fiction. The man writes very long short stories. And the novel, I think, because the way my writing is moving, I'm moving towards longer works. I've done short story, I've done flash fiction, got the collection coming out later this year. And I've been moving towards longer things. I had the novellas, the novelette, and now I'm working towards like novels and things like that. And so to see someone who has largely worked in the shorter form and then see them tackle the novel, and it's very close to a lot of the same choices that he makes in his short fiction. A lot of the same stylistic choices, a lot of the same sort of arrangement of how information is conveyed, even as far as like the nested narrative goes. And I think to see that and to see it executed so well at a longer word count is something for me who's like, okay, how am I going to take whatever I've been doing here for the last 3-4 years in short fiction, and how am I going to apply that to longer work? Was pretty inspirational for me, and sort of seeing that it can be done without necessarily losing what makes you as a writer.
That's fair. Well, then now let's chat about your book in particular, which others may find inspiring. Look at that segue. Hey. We are talking about helicopter parenting in the age of drone warfare. I had a digital copy, so I'll just Photoshop something in. Ooh, wow.
I too had a digital copy.
Wow. Carson also, wow.
Hold on, let me see if I have it on my shelf.
Don't move your hands so much. It's harder to edit it. I have to like chase your hands down. Oh, ta-da.
Oh, that is a handsome looking book.
Here we are. One of my children.
When did that come out again?
That came out on October 25th.
Nice. So it is available if you want to grab a copy. Would definitely recommend it.
It's available on Amazon, Bookshop, Barnes & Noble, any of those places where you can buy fine
aged books.
Literature.
Nice. All right, Carson.
Very good too.
Yeah, you want to hit him with that first question?
Yeah. So, in regards to helicopter parenting in the age of drone warfare, what sparked the idea of this story? Do you feel like you drew on your own fears as a parent in the digital age?
Yes.
Yes.
Moving on.
Let me expand there. So I have 2 children. I have 2 boys who are now, as of this recording, 7.5 and 4.5. And
are they dope?
When I had what?
Are they dope?
Yeah, they're okay. They're
all right.
Sick.
When we had our firstborn and we only had one kid. When you only have one kid, it's great because you can just pay attention to them, everything they're doing.
That poor second child.
What I found, he demands all the attention, so he's fine. Don't worry about him.
Just have a third one and put him in his place as the middle child. Nothing worse than that.
Never do that. My brother went through that. I could just never.
I went through that.
I'm gonna need you to procreate again, Patrick. Next episode.
Next episode, we need a third child.
Yeah, exactly. The point though is I found myself taking a lot of pictures. I have the iPhone, and I was just constantly taking photos of our son every day, taking photos of him, taking videos of him. And I had this thought of like feeling like, am I really experiencing him as a child? Am I really engaged? I have all these memories. Like I can look back through, the first 2 or 3 years of his life, and I have a picture and a video every day. That's there forever. But there's also this sort of wall between you and your child. I think every parent goes through this, at least as far as I've seen, is that you're trying to record everything, you're trying to keep everything, but some things are just moments in time that you have to be present for and live with. And I think once we had our second kid, it became a little bit more, I don't want to say easy, because nothing about parenting is ever easy, really. But it just becomes easier to kind of be present and just be there, because you're too exhausted to even pick up a camera and take a picture and videotape. So that was kind of kernel number one of inspiration. The other bit of inspiration was, there are some events in the novelette. I'll try to keep it broad and sort of like semi-spoiler free, that deal with sort of like disillusionment on the part of youth and young men, and the sort of, you look at the news, what that can lead to, especially in America, where we have easy access to things that can harm a lot of people. And a lot of times that happens in schools sometimes. To kind of speak very broadly around some of the events in the story. And I was thinking about some of these perpetrators of these acts. And, I remember reading about one in particular whose father was some sort of like movie producer or something, and they went on the shooting rampage. And so I sort of thought to myself, okay, this is obviously someone who has had a successful career. He has a family, he has a son, he has all of these things. Where was the disconnect in that relationship? Where was that moment of sort of like loss between the parents, between the father and the son in particular?
Are you talking about the incel guy?
Yeah. The
blogs?
Yeah,
and the manifesto. Yeah, I remember that guy. Because it does, from like our outside perspective, like I would say, that guy was born with a silver spoon and shit. And, you wouldn't necessarily expect that.
And that just, it's sort of, it fascinated me in this way where I'm not like a true crime guy. Like, I'm not going to go like reading, whatever is your preference, that's fine. But like the podcast and like the reading the books, it's just not for me. For me, it's more like, hey, that's an interesting idea. Let me process this through my writing, through my fiction. Like, let me wrestle with these questions by telling a story, telling myself a story, and then telling other people a story. So those were kind of the two sort of nuggets that I then, or seeds, let's say, that I planted to kind of grow the story from there. This idea of, let's say you have constant access to your child. You can follow them around with drones every day, see everything they do. You're there, even if you're physically not there, your eyes are there the whole time. Not only that, but in the book, they have technology where these sort of contact lenses are put on the child's eyes at birth, and the parents can literally see through the children's eyes if they want to. And you think about, okay, there's no way that anything bad can ever happen, right? There's just no way. This is how everything in science fiction and horror ever works. We figured it out. Great. But no, that's not how it works. There's always going to be things you're missing. And that's what I wanted to explore. It's like, when you can see everything, what aren't you seeing? What's going on behind, what you've seen in front of you, and what your actual child is thinking, how they're growing, and what's your sort of detachment potentially doing to their own development, into their own sort of trying to fit into society where they feel kind of disconnect, if you're already disconnected from your kid, then how are they feeling about their own place in society? That's sort of where I took where I was starting from, and then developed the story from there.
Yeah, that's really interesting. One of the things I was kind of wondering when I was reading it was if the father character was kind of like an exploration of your own kind of self-critique of your worst tendencies or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, every time for me, I love the flawed protagonist.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like we are all our own flawed protagonists, and if you're not, then you should maybe go talk to somebody, because there's probably something that you need to dig up there. But to an extent, I wanted to explore some of my own fears, but I also wanted to obviously amplify those worst traits, to create. I'm fascinated by characters who can elicit sympathy and empathy from readers at the beginning, and then also have readers hate them, have them find them despicable. If I can also then swing them back to thinking, well, maybe, then I really feel like I've done something. But like either way, having that pendulum of emotional response to a protagonist is something I find to be an admirable goal, really.
Yeah, totally. And it absolutely comes through with helicopter parenting, which I've said this before, has like just a amazing title. Probably one of the best titles I've heard in my life. It's one of those titles you hear and you just immediately are like, oh God, that's too fucking clever. I've got to read this.
Thank you. I was happy when I came up with it. It's just like one of those things where you're like, well, writing day is done for the
Clock out.
And I gotta write. And then you get like, oh, now I have to write the thing. Damn
it. In 3 to 4 drafts.
Exactly.
Yeah, Carson doesn't even know what that's like.
I don't understand. Yeah, I've just got my 6
a few drafts, to be honest, more than just the normal 3. This was I think I first drafted this in 2019. So it was pre-pandemic.
It's been around for a while.
And I thought it was gonna be a short story at first, and it kept going and going and going. And I was worried it was going to become a novella, and I was like, this is not quite, but it didn't quite have enough, I thought, to be a full novella. I mean, it's a longer novelette, all the same. But once I had that longer story down, I think it was a lot of refining of the voice, both of the father, who is the sort of protagonist, and we're seeing things both from him being interviewed after an incident has occurred involving his son, and also from him sort of narrating the moments leading up to this incident. And finding that balance of having it not be, as I said, exploitative, to have it not be lurid. I didn't want that. I didn't want there to be like this sort of like found footage kind of like uploaded to like 4chan kind of feel to this or anything like that. I wanted it to really be more meditative in a lot of ways, and a lot of like considering these bigger issues that are kind of in the background before this incident occurs. So that was where a lot of the revising came in, is just trying to being very sensitive to the topic let's say. We've kind of hinted around it. And being wary of that and wanting to kind of be careful in how that's presented.
Yeah, I think one of the ways you show a lot of sensitivity in the novelette is by focusing more on kind of the collateral damage in a way. You're talking about people, once removed from it, who are watching on, instead of really like relishing any bad actors or anything. So it does feel like more. It puts the reader in the same place as a lot of the characters, where they're also kind of reacting out of an emotional place.
Yeah, that's the goal.
And so obviously we're hitting on the theme of fear of your child's safety, and like what parents can feel sending their child out in the world and how they might want to control it, which kind of leads into the fact that in a lot of horror literature and shows like Black Mirror, technology is the main source of kind of I guess the antagonist in a lot of those episodes and such. And obviously with a title like Helicopter Parenting in the Age of Drone Warfare, this has a lot of the technology fears as well, which I think is fair. As you were mentioning before, like when you had your first child, like you were all over with the camera and stuff like that. And it also made me think of like when I was growing up and we had like dial up, I didn't grow up having Facebook or even MySpace, but now kids are they do TikToks and stuff, and I'm glad I never did that, because like if you are embarrassed, like if you do something really embarrassing or sometimes illegal, as these kids sometimes do, like really stupid stuff, it's out there for good. Like it's nearly impossible to get that back, versus like at least when I was being a stupid kid, like there was no one recording it. So that was a bit of a segue, but so
now cringe is eternal.
Yeah. So like what are your thoughts on this? Because obviously this is a topic that you also chose to incorporate into this story as well. And you obviously must feel some of it, like having kids, like they're going to grow up and whatever technology is going to be created, they're going to have access to it likely. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
I do think about this a lot, because I'm very lucky. I feel like in a generation where most of my like cringy like edgelord bullshit is like in memory hold off the internet.
Yeah.
So the days of like message boards that are now wiped away forever, and
Live
journal. They're still out there though. I found mine the other day. I was like, ooh, buddy.
Oh yeah.
Could you share that link with our viewers?
Can you share that link?
No, intrepid explorers out there on the World Wide Web, if you want to find some of my most cringy emo takes, you can do your little do and see what you can find.
Could be P-Barb 69XX.
Yeah.
Okay. Make it easy for him, Jesus. The fact that all of that is out there, that you have to be so mindful in crafting a persona when you barely know who you are as a person, when you're a teenager or younger, or even when you're in your 20s, I think like the brain is not fully developed till 25, 35, whatever it is just it's crazy to think about. It's like, well, okay, you have to just be mindful of all this. At the same time, like if somebody does something shitty, you got to call it out. You got to like let them know and educate. You got to like do these things. At the same time, there is just so much pressure there, and you hear stories about kids having like secret Facebook accounts, or they have like, there's like the TikTok that you see, there's the hidden TikTok, and then there's like the hidden TikTok, and there's these other things that go on. I find it fascinating. I just find that whole thing fascinating right now. I'm sure when my children are older, it will just become like a source of enragement and but for now, I can look at it with sort of an outsider's view. The other thing with the technology side of things, both with like Black Mirror, which is obviously an inspiration as well for this novelette, but the story as well, is I don't necessarily see technology as the bad guy. Technology is an enabling force. It is something that is going to bring out the worst or the best in people. And when you're talking about a horror story or like sci-fi horror or something like that, it's the technology that allows the worst traits of characters to go to the forefront. It's that permission that they give. It's a superpower in a lot of ways. It's like, if you have this power, how will you use it? And if you are somebody that does not have, that has some sort of moral failing or weakness, then it's going to be exploited by this access. And that's what I try to like tap into in the writing and crafting the story that way.
And that's a great thing to touch on, is kind of that that confronting difficulty. Were the themes of parental alienation and school violence difficult to write about? How would you advise other writers to tackle difficult topics like these?
Yeah.
Guide
Like
us,
I said,
Barb. Guide us.
like I said before,
Save us.
This is
Save
something I
us.
went through a couple of drafts because I was trying to find the right way to say these things, trying to find not the right way, but like the way I needed to say them in the story, the way these characters needed them said in the story. Because it's at the end of the day, I'm writing about one father, a son, and the people that are around them in their lives. And so I have to be true to the characters first and foremost, and tell it in a way that is emotionally true to them. At the same time, obviously, I'm bringing in my own fears as an author. I'm bringing in my own sort of desires and fears and expectations, and just every little bit of me is in there as well. And so it's like trying to filter those things and sort of find a way that they can coexist in the telling of the tale. The thing I would say is, I don't know, I don't know that this is a story that I could have written, say, 3 years ago. Even though I started it 3 years ago, I couldn't have published it and felt comfortable publishing it in that time. Like, I had to grow as a writer and feel comfortable with the choices I was making. So for writers, I think, to go back to what I said earlier, you have to be fearless first and foremost. You have to write the story as you want to tell it, but you also have to trust your instincts both ways. So if you feel like this is the way it needs to be told, this is the way I'm telling it, and you want to put it out there and it crashes and burns, or you have taken something in the wrong direction, you have to be willing to live with that choice. You have to be willing to, kind of make that decision and confront it. At the same time, if you have doubts, if you have any sort of question about, am I writing about something or approaching an area that I am not familiar with, or where I have doubts about it, in that case, ask somebody else, get somebody else to read it. I had beta readers on this. I had people that read it and, weren't necessarily saying like, I object to the subject matter, or I object to your portrayal of these characters. I mean, I'm at the end of the day, I'm writing about largely two white cis males in the book, so I'm not like, I wasn't like digging up new territory for me by any means. At the same time, I'm not the parent of a teenager. So I've had people that were teenagers that had teenagers that read the story and were able to kind of offer some insights on their thought processes and, how they would be affected in this world and in this sort of sequence of events. And not necessarily criticism of what I'm doing, let's say, but it's something where you want to have that voice. So it's a combination of fearlessness in writing, but also being fearless in terms of asking for help. I think those are two things that authors, I think sometimes people are either in one of the two camps. They're fearless in their writing, but they don't necessarily ask the right questions. They don't check in. And then there are people who are fearless in asking for help, but they let that be a block. They're going to constantly ask questions, but not necessarily produce. And I think you have to come at it from both angles. You have to both say, okay, I'm going to write what I'm going to write, but I'm also going to make sure if I'm uncomfortable with something, then that means I need to ask a question. That means I need to reach out and learn and educate myself. But then once I feel comfortable, move forward, strike, and then, type the end. And that's it. That's all you can do.
Fucking beautiful.
Beautiful, everyone. Again, you can find Patrick Barb at patrickbarb.com, where he spills his wisdom every day. Do you actually blog, or is it just kind of like a never mind?
I
He keeps his wisdom to himself.
Yeah, twitter.com/pbarb, BARB. That's where you can find me. I'm usually on my bullshit there.
Yeah. And again, this was a chat about helicopter parenting in the age of drone warfare, which you can buy now. Would definitely recommend. I enjoyed it. I think Carson enjoyed it.
Yeah, I loved it.
Good. So what projects are you working on now, or what do you have coming up in the future, P. Barb?
Well, right now I am actually working on my first novel. So I am starting the drafting process. I can't really say much about it obviously now because I don't want to spoiler anything. And I also
it's about the squirrels, isn't it?
The squirrels are back.
Finally put them in jackets.
Nice, put them in jackets.
Getting nuttier.
Ooh.
It's coming.
Too nutty, too fast.
Too the Carson Winter story.
Yes.
And no, I mean, I would love to, as I said, I would love to get a collected edition of the squirrels. I am still waiting for fan art. So anybody watching this, if you want to draw me some squirrels with, monsters and skeletons full of stray feral cats, I would welcome it.
Yeah.
The other thing, so the novel that I'm working on, just to say, when I mentioned the kids on bikes trope, that is something I'm definitely exploring in the novel. So that is on my current list of things. Otherwise, I'm working on something for a space horror anthology.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know there was one coming out. Oh, cool.
Space horror and something, still kind of playing around with different genres. I think a lot of, like I said, I'm doing a lot more longer fiction, but if the right call comes along, I'm always willing to entertain a short story or a piece of flash when I can.
Squirrels in space.
Exactly.
And viewers, that usually at the end of the interview, I have a crazy little question that I surprised the interviewee with. Well, since I have this special guest host, I've actually tasked Carson Winter to come up with the fun little surprise question. Carson?
Oh, fuck. I've been half thinking about this the entire time, and I've been really struggling with something fun. I kept wanting to ask Patrick about how different places he's lived have influenced his fiction. And I was like, no, that's too heady. And then I was like, oh, maybe I should ask him like what kind of fucking favorite pizza he does. And I was like, no, that's too lame. So I think I'm just gonna have to settle for something really relatable. What's the best horror movie you've seen lately, Patrick?
Great question again.
Full of them.
Because I just watched this I watched this on Friday, and I know it is a source of controversy on the internet.
Are you going to talk about Skinamarink?
Oh no! Oh no!
Oh yes, Patrick!
I hated it. I didn't like it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I thought it was great.
No. Yes.
Now,
Patrick.
This is the scene, because this is how I watched it based on recommendations.
Okay.
I may have consumed a edible substance
in a video game. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. to help with the experience. And then I turn off all the lights and I put the headphones in, the AirPods in, I synced it up with the TV so you can just get that aural experience. And then I sat back and watched it and just sort of like absorbed myself in the world. What I liked about this movie. Now I know
no spoilers because it is just out.
I will not.
I don't even know how you could spoil this movie.
I don't know. I don't want people to get mad at me.
Potentially unspoilable. If I do, they can write me angry emails.
Yeah, don't write me.
Send it to
Spoilers. There is many shots of the ceiling.
Yeah. Do you like
spoilers?
Walls? Do you like walls? Do you like Legos? Let me tell you. As a parent, seeing a floor full of Legos is already frightening. That was already game over. But what I liked about the movie,
Patrick, I just want to say, if you literally ducked out of view right now, your screen could be a shot from the movie because it's just pointed at the ceiling.
Yeah, exactly.
Spoilers.
Skinamarink 2023, right there.
Yeah.
Yep. There you go. In this house.
In my house. What I liked about it was it's one of those movies where you have to watch it in a certain way. It refuses to be watched casually. Like you cannot watch this movie like with the lights on and like people walking around. Like it's not a party movie.
It demands your investment.
It absolutely demands investment. It is a movie that is very much like capturing this like dreamscape world. The choices in perspective from the child's perspective, because that's on the poster. No spoilers there. You're not seeing everything, and you're just seeing the hints of things. And it reminded me of, some of that really weird fiction. It felt like of something that, even though it's very silent in a lot of ways, it felt very literary at the same time, in the sense that it's all about the things between the lines. It's all about the things you don't see that are frightening or that you can apply to it. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, like, look, I love Friday the 13th Part 2. That is one of my favorite horror movies. I like it when a guy gets a hatchet in the face.
Okay,
and
spoilers. Just kidding.
It's great. No spoilers to say it's incredible. Jason's got a bag on his head. Spoiler, it's awesome. But I like, this was something a little different, and I dug it.
So yeah, I guess
love this movie. Like I don't think I've ever been.
Carson, were you sober when you watched it?
I don't want to put it on record, but I will say that my experience was relatively similar to Patrick Barb.
See, maybe that's why. So I was completely sober. I didn't have the lights on, but I couldn't get into it. I found it like an hour in. I was like, is this going to be over soon? And I had a hard time not picking up my phone to look at it. And I like kept forcing myself to put the phone down. At one point I Googled, is it worth watching this movie while I was watching it? I was like, is the ending good? I also
relate to that too. I think it's funny that it is such a divisive movie, but it doesn't feel like we're watching different movies. Like I totally get when people say they hate it and that it's like super.
No surprises. Like it's not a judgment.
Like I was talking to Carson before about this movie, actually, and we kind of came to the conclusion like he likes really artsy stuff. I often joke like I'm very not shallow, but I just want like a fun horror experience. So when it's
not going to deliver that.
Yeah, so that wasn't for me. I was like, I just want like something fun and like something that I'll feel good after watching, So this, I was just like, I don't like going for another insight in I also don't like going to art museums, probably for the same reason. I like science museums because then you can touch things. You go to the giant like to scale uterus and you can go inside and touch the fallopian tubes. That's what I want. Like, I don't want to be in an art museum going like, yes.
You're all about that magic school bus life.
Yes, magic school bus me. So I don't like, when people were saying they loved it, I was like, I can understand why people would love it, but it just wasn't for me.
like I actually had a really visceral reaction to it that I was so surprised. And I definitely went into it like willing to play on its terms because I kind of figured that it was going to be a difficult movie. At least in like, aesthetics department. It wasn't going to be a narrative traditionally. So but during it, like for some reason, like I just somehow bought all in on it. And I literally had like my blanket like up to my face at parts and was like hiding. Like I had like regressed ages watching it. It was so terrifying to me at parts.
I mean, honestly, it fascinates me that I know it was like a limited theatrical run, and I could not imagine watching that movie in a theater, even if it's completely dark. I just can't imagine having the same experience as watching it at home in my house. Because like I felt like it's just me in this movie. We're gonna duke it out and see what happens.
Yes, there was like this kind of like energy going back between like the viewer and the movie. It almost felt like meditative or something. Like it was hypnotic the way that, and I can't even like deny this, like nothing fucking happens. Nothing fucking happens in this movie.
Spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers. If you like movies where nothing fucking happens, you're gonna love this. That's why I love it. I love movies where nothing fucking happens. But like I was watching it and I was scared like a 3-year-old. My wife, on the other hand, was like nodding off, about to go to sleep. So
Preach.
yeah, I feel like it's just one of those divisive films. She didn't think it was bad, but she was also like, I did not get the same reaction as you did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So in that way, I think it's a really exciting movie, just because
I would agree. Yeah.
it brings out like diverse reactions.
Yeah, to me, it felt like the truest successor, and this is after a decade, like literal decade, of To the Blair Witch Project.
Yes.
In that, I think a lot of found footage after the Blair Witch just took the idea of we have a camera, and that was it.
Yeah.
This movie and Blair Witch share the DNA that they share is this sense that they don't give you anything. Like the way this movie works and the way like Blair Witch Project works is, you have to work and you have to fill in the blanks and you have to like accept what you're shown.
And there's so many like bizarre choices that you like constantly have to reckon with them and question those choices and be like, why is this part subtitled? Why are we only looking at the ceilings? Is there a suggestion that there was something outside of the frame of the ceilings? Like the ceiling's the only thing safe to look at? Like while you're watching it, you're kind of decoding the language of the film, but it just creates more questions about what's happening. And they're unsettling.
How to watch it at all? Like it doesn't really give you. It's not holding your hand. It's teaching you how to watch it at all.
No. Great answer, Patrick. I'm so glad you brought up.
Well, Patrick, this is the last time you'll be on Plim Talks. It was great. No, just kidding.
Well, it's not time for me to get out all of my.
It's my last time too, Patrick. Don't worry.
Oh, that you kicked out. Just kidding. So again, thank you, Patrick Barb, for coming on to Plim Talks and chatting about your book and writing in general. I know we got pretty heavy, but we felt like you're a heavy hitter, so you could take it. And again, you can find him at patrickbarb.com, or you can go on Twitter and find him there. All the links will be in the description below. Same with the info for my co-host Carson with his dubious taste in movies. Yep. Carson, just kidding. It's an okay movie, sure. I feel bad for saying I didn't think it was a bad movie. I just didn't, it wasn't for me. But so again, thank you. If you're looking for a copy of this book, I will have it linked in the description below, and go watch Skinner Marink if you want, I guess. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Patrick.
Aw.